Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we will be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 23rd November 2020. Now since it's a Monday, there aren't much news to be discussed in the newspaper. However, these following topics will be discussed today and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let's start. Dear students, we are very pleased to inform you that the mains compass for Indian society and social issue as well as social justice for the upcoming main CSE 2020 has been released. Now, society and social justice are parts of the GS paper 1 and paper 2 respectively. And the syllabus of these topics is very limited, but nonetheless they have high importance in our understanding of polity, economy and the social development. And these subjects are also very important in writing good essay and also help you during the interview. So RAU'S IAS Study Circle understand the unique needs of these topics, and hence we have created this book to ensure that you get the essence of the entire thing completely. This mains compass for Indian society, social issues and social justice is available for free on the RAU'S ELEARN platform and you can download it from here. We will begin today's discussion by taking this news which appears on page number 9 titled 132 countries attend global meet on criminal finances. Well, recently the Interpol, the EUPOL and the Basel Institute organized the 4th global conference on criminal finances and cryptocurrencies, in which more than 132 countries participated. And in this conference, the representatives basically spoke about the cryptocurrency related crimes. Therefore, in this context today, we will be talking about the status of cryptocurrency in India and how it should be regulated. But before we talk about regulating cryptocurrency, we first need to understand what exactly it is. And before we can understand what a cryptocurrency is, we first need to understand what do we mean by a virtual currency. So a virtual currency is basically a digitally tradable form of value. Hence, a form of value which can be traded digitally online is a virtual currency. Now, this virtual currency can be used as a medium of exchange, as a store of value, or a unit of account. Now, if you are aware, being a medium of exchange, store of value, and a unit of account is the basic function of money as well. Thus, virtual currency is a form of value which performs all the function of a money, only thing it is tradable digitally and online. However, what is to be remembered here is that virtual currency is not a legal tender. Now, a legal tender is basically guaranteed by the central government or the sovereign, and all the parties or the people are legally bound to accept it as a mode of payment. Coming on to what is cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a type of virtual currency which is decentralized in nature and is protected by cryptographic encryption techniques. Now, decentralization here implies that there is no central authority or one authority where all the records relating to the transaction of this cryptocurrency is maintained. Instead, all the transaction data is recorded and shared across multiple distributor networks through independent computers. And this technology, where transaction data is recorded and shared across multiple distributors, is also known as the distributed ledger technology. Now, since we are talking about cryptocurrency from an economic point of view, I will stop the discussion about cryptocurrency right here. More details about how it functions will become part of science and technology. Now, last year as well, the government formed a high-level inter-ministerial committee headed by Subhash Chandra Garg to look into the matter related to cryptocurrency. Now, this committee has recommended a complete ban on the private cryptocurrency. However, it is of the opinion that a single official cryptocurrency for India should be launched, and this cryptocurrency should be backed by RBI. Additionally, if you are following news regularly, you must be knowing that Supreme Court lifted the ban imposed by the Reserve Bank of India in 2018, prohibiting any and all kind of financial institutions to deal with cryptocurrency. Recently, Supreme Court has lifted this ban and has stated that though RBI is very well within its limit and its mandate to regulate virtual currency, However, a complete prohibition or a complete ban is a little excessive. And rather, what the RBI should do is that RBI should try to regulate the cryptocurrency. And in fact, even the government should try and harness the underlying technology, for example, the distributed ledger technology or the blockchain technology, and use it into various aspects of governance. Now, in this regard, first let us talk about the various issues related to virtual currency. And this was, in fact, one of the reasons as to why the government decided to ban cryptocurrency in the first place. The first issue, of course, is the investment risk. Now, cryptocurrencies are subjected to market fluctuations. For example, the value of a Bitcoin cryptocurrency reduced from around 20,000 US dollar somewhere in around December 2017 to almost 4,000 US dollars in November 18. That is, in less than a year, its value fell more than one-fourth. Hence, since cryptocurrencies are subject to market fluctuations, therefore it brings along with it a very high investment risk. Second risk is that of regulation. Now, since cryptocurrencies are decentralized in nature, it makes it very difficult to regulate them. As we discussed earlier, in cryptocurrency, there is no central authority where we are recording the transaction. In fact, the entire transaction data is recorded and shared amongst various computers. Therefore, it is decentralization of the cryptocurrency which makes it very difficult to regulate. Then third risk is the security risk. Now, cryptocurrency design has several vulnerabilities which leave consumer open to risk of phishing cyber attacks as well as Ponzi schemes. Furthermore, since transactions are irreversible, there is no way to solve or redress a wrong transaction. The fourth risk is that cryptocurrencies require large amount of storage as well as processing powers to be harnessed, and this can have a lot of unfavorable consequences on the country's energy resources and on the environment ultimately. Last but not the least, the issue with cryptocurrency is that they provide a fair amount of anonymity. And due to this anonymity, cryptocurrency can be used for illegal activities such as money laundering as well as terror financing. Therefore, all such risks are associated with virtual currency and cryptocurrency in particular if we leave them unregulated. Next, let us talk about how the other countries around the world are dealing with the issue of cryptocurrency. Now, different regulatory frameworks are followed in different countries with respect to cryptocurrency. For example, in Japan, Thailand, Switzerland, etc., these countries allow cryptocurrency as a mode of payment. Furthermore, for some countries like Russia, cryptocurrency is only allowed as a mode of exchange, that is in the form of barter and not in the form of payments. But then there are some other countries also which in the recent past have launched cryptocurrency as their sovereign currency. For example, Marshall Island in 2018 launched its cryptocurrency named as SOV. Furthermore, even Venezuela is contemplating to launch a cryptocurrency named as Petro, whose value will be connected to the underlying asset of 1 barrel of oil. Moreover, China has in a limited way launched its own cryptocurrency. Therefore, the regulatory framework around the world is very different. Furthermore, there are some countries which have completely banned cryptocurrency as well. This included India, this includes Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, etc., and such other countries which have completely banned the use of cryptocurrency. Lastly, dealing with the question as to what should then be the way to deal with cryptocurrency. For this question's answer, we can get a little bit of foresight if we look into the Subhash Chandra Garg Committee's recommendation. Now, this committee recommended a complete ban on private cryptocurrencies. They said that all private cryptocurrencies should be banned in India and any activity connected with cryptocurrencies should be criminalized through law. Second, it has recommended that we should introduce an official digital currency. Now, an official digital currency will have several advantages over the existing payment mechanism. For example, these will include availability of all records of transaction, cheaper alternate for cross-border payments, as well as ease and safety of distribution. Therefore, in this regard, the committee recommended that an open mind needs to be kept regarding the introduction of an official digital currency in India. It recommended that if further required, a committee may be set up to examine and develop an appropriate model of digital currency for India. And if at all such a digital currency is issued, then obviously it is the RBI who should be the regulator. Thirdly, it said that we should apply and make good use of this distributed ledger technology. Now, the committee observed that the DLT or the distributed ledger technology has several potential applications in other fields as well. The DLT makes it easier to identify duplicate transactions, therefore can be utilized for fraud detection, processing KYC requirements, claim management for insurance, etc. Furthermore, it can also be helpful to remove errors as well as frauds in land markets if used for maintaining land records. Furthermore, the committee also recommended that the Department of Economic Affairs should be given the job to identify the users of DLT and then take measures to facilitate its usages. Similarly, financial sector regulators should also examine the utility of this technology in their respective fields. So this was all about regulating cryptocurrency in India. With this, let's take up our next news. Now, this next news has been picked up from page number 6 and it is titled No Minister, the trade agreement pitch is flawed. Well, recently Mr. S. Jaishankar, who is the India's External Affairs Minister, highlighted that the free trade agreements have had a negative impact on the Indian economy. Because as per him, due to these free trade agreements, there have been an increase in the imports in our country and this has affected our domestic industries as well as domestic manufacturing. And due to the decrease in domestic manufacturing, there has been job loss and slower growth for India. Therefore, in a nutshell, he feels that it is the free trade agreements which have led to deindustrialization of the Indian economy. Now, what has been pointed out by Mr. Jaishankar is the same premise and rather the same assumption which the government too has made, and based on this premise, the government of India has now adopted a very inward oriented strategy to bring the focus back on the domestic industries in order to foster growth and development. However, this article is a critique of this inward oriented strategy of the present government. And this article says that such inward oriented strategies will rather negatively affect the Indian economy. Before we talk about these assumptions and how they are flawed, let us first see what are some of the strategies adopted by the government to promote local goods. That is, what are some of these inward oriented strategies. First is that government has appealed to the nationalistic sentiments of the people. It has appealed to Indians to buy and promote Indian good, as is evident from the Local for Vocal campaign. Secondly, India has withdrawn from several FTAs such as RCEP to protect its domestic industry and has also called for reviewing all its existing FTAs in order to make them more friendly and favorable to India. Thirdly, India has increased safeguard and custom duty on various items such as solar panel cells, etc., to promote domestic manufacturing. Lastly, government is giving higher preference to domestic companies as far as public procurement is concerned. So these are some of the few strategies which clearly points out to the inward oriented strategy of the government. Now, as I pointed out, the author says that the government strategy to adopt inward oriented strategy is based on several number of assumptions. So here the government is making several assumptions based on which it has assumed that it is in the best interest for India to adopt a inward oriented strategy. However, a recent research paper published by Arvind Subramaniam and Soumitra Chatterjee actually have highlighted that these assumptions by the government are in itself very flawed. So what I'm going to discuss here, the 3 points, they are actually the assumption which the government has made and how the author in this present article, based on this research paper published by Arvind Subramaniam, is saying that these premises or these assumptions are flawed. So please keep this in mind that here whatever I'm mentioning, these 3 points are the assumptions which according to the author is flawed. So if you look at this article from the point of view of UPSC, this article has in fact taken a rather anti-government stand. If not anti-government, it is very critical of the basic notion of the government strategy. So be very careful as to how you are using these points, because at the end of the day you are preparing for a government service exam and you cannot clearly just go ahead and criticize government so openly, right? So in fact these points can be helpful in the interview, but the reason we are discussing this article is that this will help you to develop that critical thinking which is required in an administrator. So good or bad, we have to cover all aspects, but just be careful as far as the examination is concerned how you are using these points. Okay, so let's start. The first assumption made by the government is the large domestic size of the Indian economy. Now, the Indian government believes, as per the author, that the demand in the Indian domestic market is large enough to support the economic growth, and therefore there is no need to boost exports. However, it is felt that this is a flawed assumption because the Indian domestic market is in reality small, and it will continue to remain small in the near as well as in the medium term. Therefore, India alone cannot rely on the domestic market to spearhead its economic growth. We need exports for the growth of the economy. Hence, India cannot afford to adopt such an inward oriented strategy. What we need is an outward oriented strategy focusing on exports. The second exemption is that the growth is driven by demand and not by exports. Here, the author says that the second myth is that India's growth story has been driven by domestic demand and not by export. However, this research paper, which I mentioned here, has clearly stated that in the last 3 decades, the exponential or the stellar growth which India's economy showed was based on the high exports which India had. Therefore the exports have played a very crucial role in India's growth story. In fact, between 1995 to 2018, exports grew in India almost at 13.4% of annual rate. In fact, this is the third best performance in the world among the top 50 exporters, and this is nearly twice the world average growth. And the 3.4% figure is not far behind China's growth of over 15%. Hence, India's growth story has been led by exports and has not been driven by demand. This is what the author says. Third is the assumption that there will be decrease in exports in post-COVID world. Well, some of the advocates of inward orientations argue that even if India's exports have done well in the past, the future is going to be different. In particularly, as far as export growth is concerned, export growth will be very slow due to COVID and also due to the protectionist policies which the countries around the world will now follow post-COVID. Hence, due to COVID and the protectionist policy, it is felt that export around the world will be slow and will fall down. However, this research paper has highlighted that the report that globalization will now come to an end is actually exaggerated. Though it is true that in the COVID and the post-COVID time, the growth exports of good has come down. However, the exports of services have continued to increase even during COVID period. Therefore, in other words, the globalization of services will continue to grow and India needs to leverage in this opportunity, considering the fact that India is already a forerunner as far as exports of services is concerned. Furthermore, it has also highlighted that Indian economy, since it has a large share in the export of merchandise good, should take an example from Vietnam and Bangladesh and in fact increase its share of export and try to incorporate some of the pillars of an export-led model so that it can increase its economic growth multifold. Hence, in conclusion, the author here is saying that the government should realize that the path to self-sufficiency is through export promotion as well as the global economic integration. And the government, by following very inward looking strategies and following protectionism and import substitution, that will not be beneficial for India in the long run. So this was what this article was stating. With this, let's take up our next news. This next news appears as an editorial on page number 6 titled Pressure and Punishment. Well, the context of the news is that an anti-terrorism court in Lahore has convicted Hafiz Saeed, a UN designated terrorist, whom India and USA blamed for the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks, on charges of terror finance. Now, this, according to the author, shows that Pakistan can be forced to act against terror networks under international pressure. Because earlier Pakistan was a safe haven for Hafiz Saeed, and Pakistan refused to act against him and his networks. However, after the UNSC condemned his organization LET and United States of America put a bounty on his head, and the FATF, that is the Financial Action Task Force, put pressure of blacklisting Pakistan, that Pakistan started to toe the line. Now, everything else which has been written in this article is the personal opinion on the author, basically point to the fact that international pressure can motivate Pakistan to mend its way. However, what is of importance for us from the point of view of our examination is the Financial Action Task Force. Now, the FATF has been discussed earlier as well. So, very quickly, from the point of view of prelims, I am going to discuss this today. Now, FATF was established in the year 1989 by the G7 countries. Now, though it is organizationally different from the OECD, however, it is headquartered in the OECD Secretariat in Paris. Now, the Financial Action Task Force is the global money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog. So, its mandate includes combating money laundering. This was the original mandate. Then, in the year 2001, they expanded their mandate to include terror financing. And then in 2012, it added efforts to counter the financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. So these three, money laundering, terrorist financing and weapons of mass destruction, are the three major mandate of FATF. Now, what you need to remember about FATF is that it is an international policy making body and it sets international standards and guidelines for countries to adhere to. However, FATF has no role to play in the enforcement, investigation or prosecution of any offences in that country. So, for example, if today in India some money laundering on an international scale is happening, you cannot go and report to the FATF because FATF does not have the enforcement mechanism. It is simply a policy making body which sets out international guidelines and standards to help countries. It cannot go investigate or prosecute a person. Therefore, the objectives of the FATA are to set standards and promote effective implementation of the legal, regulatory and the operational measures for combating all these three. Furthermore, the FATF has come out with what is known as the 40+9 FATF recommendation or the FATF standards. Now, basically, FATF has 40 standards for money laundering and 9 standards for countering terror financing. Together, they are known as 40+9 FATF standards. And these standards help the authorities to go after the money of criminals who deal in illegal drugs, human trafficking, as well as other crimes. So, it is these FATF recommendations or standards which ensure a coordinated global response to prevent organized crime, corruption, and terrorism. Because most often than not, these three crimes mentioned here, take place on a global level in a very coordinated way. Hence, we need an organization which comes out with rules and regulations so that there can be a uniformity in the way countries are tackling these three offences. Now, the FATF identifies the jurisdiction with weak measures to combat money laundering and terrorist financing in 2 FATF public documents known as the Blacklist and the Grey List, and these are published 3 times in a year. So, as far as the blacklist is concerned, blacklist is the common name. In technical terms, it is called as high-risk jurisdiction subject to call for action. So, this blacklist recognizes and identifies all those countries which have serious strategic deficiencies to counter these offences of money laundering, terrorist financing, and financing of proliferation. For all the countries identified as high risk, the FATF calls on all members and urges all countries to apply enhanced due diligence. And in most serious cases, it also tells the other countries to apply countermeasures to protect international financial system from the ongoing money laundering, terrorist financing in these countries. Currently, only North Korea and Iran are the 2 jurisdictions or countries under the blacklist of the FATF. Now, the grey list, also known as the jurisdictions under increased monitoring, identifies countries that are actively working with the FATF to address strategic deficiencies in their regimes to counter money laundering, terrorist financing, etc. Now, when FATF places a country under this grey list, the monitoring on that country increases. That means the country has to quickly take action to rectify its strategic deficiencies within the agreed time frame. Currently, countries like Pakistan is the grey list, and also the grey list includes Myanmar, Syria, Yemen, etc., amongst few other countries. So, this is all you need to know about FATF as far as your prelims are concerned. With this, let's take up our next news. This news we have taken from page number 9, titled Prime Minister for Integrated Fight Against the Climate Change. Now, at a side event of the G20 summit titled Safeguarding the Planet, the Circular Carbon Economy Approach, while addressing this event, Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, has stated that India is exceeding its Paris Accord targets and is well on its path to fight against climate change. Therefore, in this article today, we will be exhaustively covering the various initiatives undertaken by the Government of India to tackle climate change. But before talking about such initiatives, first let us see what were the targets or the nationally determined contributions set by India in the COP21, or also known as the Paris Agreement. Firstly, India promised by that 2030 it will achieve one-third reduction in its emission intensity of the GDP compared to the 2005 level. Secondly, it promised that by 2030, 40% of its installed power capacity will come from renewable or non-fossil fuel sources. And thirdly, it stated that by 2030, India will add additional carbon sink by adding additional forest and tree cover. Now, as party to the UNFCCC, India is to submit biennial update report. Now, as per the second BUR, or the biennial update report, which India submitted to the UNFCCC, it is stated that the emission intensity of India's GDP has reduced by 21% in the period starting from 2004 to 2014. Therefore, there is a vast reduction in its emission intensity, and this India was able to achieve only because of its proactive and sustained actions on climate change. Now, let us look at the initiative and sustained actions taken by India. First is the National Action Plan on Climate Change. Now, this plan identifies a number of measures which help not only in the country's development process but also helps India to tackle its climate change related objectives of adapting and mitigating to climate change. Then India has the National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency. Under this, we follow what is known as the PAT scheme, that is Perform, Achieve and Trade. And this PAT scheme was designed in order to reduce specific energy consumption. Then obviously we have the National Solar Mission, whose aim is to increase the mix of solar energy in the total energy mix of India. And of the total 100 gigawatt target which we have set for ourselves, we have already achieved 32.5 gigawatt of it. Then we have the National Water Mission. Now, the focus of the National Water Mission is to monitor the various water resources such as the groundwater, aquifer, etc. It also focuses on capacity building, monitoring the water quality, as well as other baseline study. Its aim is that we want to increase our water use efficiency by 20%. Then we have the National Mission for Green India. In this mission, we want to increase the tree and forest cover by 5 million hectares. And in addition to adding the new forest and tree cover, we also want to increase the quality of our existing forests. Next, we have the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. Now, this National Mission on Sustainable Habitat is being implemented through 3 sub-initiatives or programs, namely the Atal Mission on Rejuvenation Urban Transformation, also known as the Amrut Scheme, the Swachh Bharat Mission, which has been a spectacular success, as well as the Smart Cities Mission. Furthermore, India has also made mandatory or compulsory the Energy Conservation Building Rules of 2018 for all the commercial buildings. Moving ahead, we have what is known as the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. This mission focuses on food security and protecting our resources. In here too, we have set certain targets which include that we should have 3.5 lakh hectares of area under organic farming. We should increase the area under precision irrigation. We should increase the area under system of rice intensification, so on and so forth. In fact, this mission has resulted in the formation of the National Innovation on Climate Resilient Agriculture, which is a network project. Moving ahead, we also have the National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem. Now, the main aim of this mission, as the name suggests, is to come out with a sustainable and a suitable management and policy measures in order to sustain the Himalayan ecosystem and environment. Next, we have the National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. In this mission, we want to build up a knowledge system which will inform us about what kind of actions do we need to take in order to make our development more ecologically sustainable. Under this, various excellence centers as well as climate change centers have been set up. Then we have the Climate Change Action Program. Now, this Climate Change Action Program is a central sector scheme, and the main idea of the scheme is to support as well as build capacity both of the central and the state government so that we can strengthen our fight against climate change and can also increase our capacity to withhold climate change. Next, we have what is known as the energy efficiency measures. Under this, we have the ECBC, which is the Energy Conservation Building Code. Now, this code prescribes the energy performance standards for construction of any new commercial buildings. And as per this ECBC code, such a new commercial building has to achieve 50% reduction in energy use by 2030. Furthermore, schemes like Ujala and LED bulb distribution has been performing very well. Furthermore, under the Street Light National Program, we have replaced conventional street lights with the LED street lights. Then we are also promoting the adoption of electric vehicle. This we are doing through the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, the FAME India scheme, etc., whose major aim is to promote the manufacturing as well as the adoption of electric and hybrid vehicle technology in India. Next, we are also promoting the use of biofuel. We have the National Biofuel Policy of 2018, as per which we have the target where we want to blend 20% ethanol in petrol as well as 5% of biodiesel in the diesel by 2030. Then we have a fund for climate change. Now, we set up the National Adaptation Fund on Climate Change in the year 2015, which rather financially supports the adaptive activities and measures taken by the government in order to tackle climate change. And this is usually used by those states or UTs which are particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Now, this is a central sector scheme which is being implemented by NABARD. Next, we have the National Voluntary Guidelines on Social, Environment and Economic Responsibility. Now, the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs in 2011 developed the concept of National Voluntary Guidelines. Then, furthermore, in the year 2012, SEBI mandated the Annual Business Responsibility Reporting, which is a reporting framework based on this National Voluntary Guidelines. And these guidelines serve as a driver to pursue sustainable management practices. Then, lastly, we have the green bonds. Now, as the name suggests, green bonds are nothing but debt securities. Only thing the proceeds from these securities are used 100%, that is completely, to finance green projects and assets. In fact, after China, India is the second largest emerging market for green bond. Furthermore, a number of government agencies, Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency, as well as the Indian Railway Finance Corporation, etc., have all contributed to issue these green bonds. Then in the year 2018, SBI also entered the green bond market with the certified climate bond. Last but not the least, we have International Platform for Sustainable Finance. Now, this platform acknowledges the global nature of financial markets, thereby understanding the fact that these financial markets have the potential to finance actions and initiatives against climate change. in order to achieve a low carbon and a climate resilient economy. India in 2019 became the part of international platform on sustainable finance. So these are the most important and major initiative taken by the government to tackle climate change.